Welcome to the Room of Lives. I'm your host, Neil. This episode was a conversation I had with my young and idealistic friend. We talk about the pursuit of wealth, power, prestige, and knowledge, and the interlink of science and capitalism. But is life instead actually about learning to love better? If so, how do we do it? Does this love mean overlooking the dark and loveless side of the world? We also talk about my friend's psychic communications with nature, seeing omens of death, and the risks of having a sensitive and open heart. I think this morning when I kind of woke up at 5 a.m. or something, I think this is when that happened. And I think it's partly influenced by the fact that you're here and the kind of person you are. And yesterday you were talking about, when you take I guess it was LSD or something, when you were in nature, you looked at people and you're like, oh, I just want to love people. Mm-hmm. I think it was kind of influenced by that thought. So when I woke up, I was like, I feel like the purpose of life or the purpose of the universe, if there is any such purpose, I don't really believe in God or something. If there seems to be some kind of purpose, is that we are all here to learn how to love better. And that's the ultimate purpose. What do you think about that idea?
I think that's so when I was on LSD the first time, as I was also learning so much about yoga, I learned the purpose of life is being happy and make the world happier and being in a state of love and show love to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like
that was at 5 p.m.
That was at 5 a.m. Yeah.
You 5 a.m. That's the purpose of life.
Why are we here? Yeah. So, I think as humans, we make up and kind of get lost in a lot of different purposes, like career or whatever, some particular personal relationship or power or wealth or, whatever. So if you ask different people, their purposes in life, they will say are different depending on whatever circumstance they're in or whatever. But I feel like, if you focus on all of those different little mini purposes, they don't always work out, Yeah. So you could be focusing on money and that's your purpose. And you can figure out, okay, it's kind of complicated to get money in the world, but you can learn how to do it better and everything. But even if you just focus on that money, the nature of the world is such that you still remain kind of trapped in a lot of different problems if you have just focused on money. If you have just focused on career or power, you still remain kind of trapped. It's like your problems are not over, you kind of stay...
There are more.
Yeah, there are more sometimes. There are different problems or whatever. I think rich and powerful people have different problems than poor people.
Oh yeah.
But there are still problems. And so as long as there are still problems, even if you have solved what you thought was that purpose, maybe you thought the purpose was money, even if you have solved that, it hasn't really liberated you. So you're still trapped in all of these things. And so maybe you think, oh, the solution is to get even more money or even more power or something. So you can be trapped in this maze for a long time. And I feel like the only thing that I've seen that seems to go in the direction of liberating me from all of the different traps is to just learn to love better. And that's why I was thinking, I think the point of all of these things, these things of course exist, the economy exists and all of this science and all of these things, each of those things with their own set of rules and problems, and you can But I think the point of all of those things is to just kind of like ultimately to learn to love better, you know? And a lot of those things are kind of like a distraction. Like, it's kind of like you have a game and the ultimate purpose of the game is this. But to complicate the game and make it more interesting, you have all of these other like quests and side quests and distractions or whatever. And I think they're not just distractions. Like, even in the world where you're trying to get more money or get more power, every time you make some step to satisfy that purpose, the world responds back to you. It's like we are in a constant state of feedback with the world. And with every response that the world gives you, regardless of what purpose you're seeking, it's basically training you. Like, you can take that information and learn how to love better. Even if your purpose is at that time to like get more power or whatever, the world is giving you like constant, consistent feedback. So, I mean, I feel like as a human being, I'm definitely feel like I don't know how to love perfectly well. And, yeah, it's definitely not easy to, you know, love better. It has a lot of challenges. But I was like, yeah, I think that kind of seems to be the one thing where if you just like focus, like your life also keeps getting better and everything keeps getting better. And, it's like there are fewer distractions and yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I'm so happy. I'm having this conversation, like listening to this right now. So when I was in Hawaii, I got to that conclusion and I was able to talk about this with the person in the yoga studio because, of course, he knows a lot about it. Yeah. And then after Hawaii, like I haven't been able to talk about this to anybody. The moment I started talking about, like, for example, with my sister, she was like, like, what are you saying? Like, you're crazy. Yeah. And so I stopped thinking about it. But I really feel like that it's the reality. Like in Hawaii, like in the place that I was in, it's in Paia, so many people believe in this. So you are able to feel the feedback in the world. Like I was talking to Maui. I was talking to the island, and the island would respond to me. Like every time I was like asking questions about how to love and how to have a pure heart, like the island will tell me. Or like will challenge me. Like today you're gonna learn to be patient. Today you're gonna learn to be whatever. But yeah, like I got to the conclusion like, yeah, that's the purpose of life, love. And I feel like the system of the world is made so that we are not able to realize that. So they put us like, oh, you have to be successful. Oh, you have to focus on money. What's the purpose of having money? Like I always wonder that. Like, what's the purpose of having money? Like, for example, if you want to do something with the money, I get it. Like, for example, my purpose is building to do whatever. So I need money. My purpose is going to be getting money. Yeah. Okay, cool. Because you have an actual purpose, building a building. But if it's just the money, it doesn't make sense. It's like you're going to get stuck in that circle of just getting money, because it's not an actual goal. Having money cannot be a goal. Because how much money? Yeah. So the system is made so that we are not able to wake up and see the reality. Yeah. And just like being slaves of the system, and we are way easier to control. Yeah. Yeah. But I also think, I mean, all of that is true, but I feel like I also don't blame anyone for that system. I kind of just see all of this as like a big cosmic game. And just as in a game, there's going to be a lot of challenges and difficulties and distractions. Because otherwise it's not a big adventure. You know, if you went straight from point A to point B, then it would just be like, so I think the kind of the existence of all of these distractions and misdirections is to make it even more kind of intense, like all of our paths. But you know, so when you were having that experience on, I guess, LSD where the skeletons, the pink skeletons came. Was that on LSD? Shrooms, yeah. You were on shrooms, and so you basically wanted to like focus on love, but the shrooms came, the skeletons came. It sounds like super crazy.
Yeah. The skeletons came, and they were basically inviting you into the dark part of the world and saying, I know you want to stay in love, but there's a lot of darkness going on in the world. But you were like, nah, not this time. I think I just want to stay in love. So, my question is that kind of love like a complete love then? Or at that time, like, did you not choose to ignore some kind of like the dark side of the world? And what is the role of that dark side of the world in like, do you think we have to like embrace the dark side or experience the dark side to eventually advance in love?
Okay, wait, can you repeat the first question was...
Okay,
like,
so
what is the state of love? Or...
Yeah, so these skeletons were basically trying to say there's a lot of darkness in the world.
Oh yeah, but like, what is the question?
The question is, at that time you were like, no, I'm not going to go into that darkness. Yeah. I'm just going to stay in love.
Yeah.
But that love that you stayed in, where you ignored the darkness, is that complete love? Or do you think to completely experience love, you also have to experience the darkness?
Yeah, the thing is like, I feel you can be in total state of love, but you have to acknowledge what is going on in the world too. So I feel like that's the reason why I feel like I need to see the darkness and what is going on in the world, because I feel like I'm really trapped in this like world of, oh yeah, look at this privileged world, these privileged people, but there's so many things going on in the world. But like I feel like I've been like in a state of love, like when you meditate and you're in a state of love, that like everything is love. But yeah, so I decided like I really want to see that darkness, but as I was like, okay, I feel like I need to do more shrooms to be completely like comfortable with the shrooms. Like I'm comfortable with the shrooms, but I feel like I'm not that advanced to explore other dimensions and realities in the darkness. Because I don't know.
So what do you think would like, when you decided I'm not going to go with those skeletons, was it because you felt like scared?
Yeah, because I was by myself and I was like, what if I have a bad trip?
Yeah.
Because I think that if I see the darkness, maybe, like, of course I'm going to feel the darkness, but I don't know how it is going to be. And I was scared of having a bad trip. So that was part of it. So I want to, like, learn more about the shrooms and how to get out of a bad trip if it happens.
Yeah.
Because as I'm going to be by myself, I want to know how to get out. Because, like, okay, if I am in a bad trip, nobody's going to help me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have not commonly heard that on shrooms someone like encounters like other entities. Like, I mean, you do see images, but these were kind of like some beings like skeletons that came and they had some intention. They're like, come with us and etc. Those kinds of experiences, from what I've heard, happen to people on like stronger psychedelics, like DMT or something like that. So, and also even when you're not on psychedelics, even when you're like sober, you say that, you can kind of like communicate with nature. So I feel like some part of your mind is just like more sensitive.
I don't want to think that.
You don't want to think that?
At one point, I was like feeling that sometimes and I got really scared with everything.
Oh.
So like sometimes when I meditate, I see things.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like I didn't like relate it to that. Like I didn't wanna. I was like, okay, well, whatever. But at one point, I was like, well, I'm opening my heart really much right now. Okay, so one day I was meditating and I was like, the moment I started closing my eyes, I was like seeing death.
Yeah.
So much death, and I was like, what the fuck? And I got really scared. And
like you were seeing visions of death, like people dying.
Like the feeling of
feeling of death.
Yeah, the feeling of death and like death. I don't know how to portray that, but like death. So I opened my eyes and I was scared and I was like, okay, I'm gonna talk to my mother or my sister. How is she doing? And it was at night, but there it was in the morning. They were like, oh yeah, no, we're okay and stuff. And I was like, I'm learning how to do tarot. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna see what the tarot says. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna see the health of my mom, my sister, my dad and my dog, because they were like the people that I will be, kind of care about their health. And I did all of them except the one of my dog, because when I was doing them, and then I was like, yeah, no, well, I think that the images of that, it was just because the other day I did his rooms and I saw these skeletons, so maybe it was just like, like learning about death or something or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. And then next day, I was like, so every time I was seeing a dog, and I didn't read the one of my dog, and every time I was seeing a dog the next day, like they will come to me. They will come to me and like love me so much, and it's something that usually happens. And a dog that I met the other day, so the day before, I met a random guy, and he was with the dog, and I didn't even see the dog. The dog didn't interact with me, but then the day after the meditation, and I saw that, the dog came to me like crazy. And I was like, oh, it's so cute, like, oh, so beautiful. And like, I felt like how my dog, when he used to see me, like he would be like, he would do the same, and like, yeah, so many things. And then, yeah, but I didn't connect to that. And then that night, I was like, I was gonna go to a place, but suddenly a guy told me to go to another place, and I went there, and there was like a party, and I don't know, like I had like a really crazy experience that night, and it was like super bad. And yeah, then I went home, and I was super bad, and I was like, okay, well, whatever, it's okay. Then the next day in the morning, I was like, yo, like, I'm just gonna go to the park and chill, because that night was crazy. And I went to Balboa Park, that it's like a really famous park of San Diego. And like every time I saw like a living being, I was crying. Like I saw a bird and I was crying. I saw a dog and I was crying.
Why?
I didn't know, and I was like, what the fuck? What is wrong with me? It's because last night was crazy or like what? And I was just like crying. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to meditate, and I wasn't able to meditate. And then I sat in a bank, and the bench, and the bench was like, it says like, oh, this is for my dog and my grandma, and like it's people that died. And I started crying too. And then my sister FaceTimed me, and I took the FaceTime, and she was crying, and I was crying already, and she was like, well, Mimo died. Like, she literally said that, and it's my dog, the first dog that I've ever had and whatever. And I was like, shit. And, yeah, and so then I was seeing the time when she was telling me, so my mother went with the dog to the hospital and stuff, and so when he was dying, like when he was really bad, like when he was like having convulsions and stuff, I was having that crazy night, and during that crazy night, I was on weed too, and I was having a panic attack. So when I was having the panic attack, at that same time, because I sent a message to my roomie, my dog was having convulsions, and then when I was like seeing the dogs and stuff, they were already in the hospital, and then when I was just like fucking crying in the park, like my dog was dying.
Yeah.
So yeah, since that moment I was like, fuck, like I became really scared of the things that I see or I feel, because it's like, it's a word trying to communicate. Like, am I going crazy, or what is wrong? Like, because it's not normal. And I was like, well, maybe it was just this experience because I had a really huge connection with my dog, and maybe it's that, but it's still like, what is this?
But I would say that's different from going crazy, because this seems to have like an actual connection. Like this experience seemed to be actually trying to communicate to you some like real information. Whereas like crazy, I think it's like random information that does not mean anything.
But how do you know if it is random or not? Because sometimes, like, for example, in Hawaii, like, Hawaii was so crazy for me because I was like meditating every day, and like I was really being conscious, and I was communicating with the ocean and stuff, even sober. And like I felt it real because it was real. Like, for example, sometimes I was like, oh, like for example, if I was like, I wanted a ride somewhere, and I was like, how do you say, like attracting it, like I was able to attract whatever, and it was crazy. I was like, wow, like this is real. Like what people say about meditation, about attracting things and stuff, it's real because everything is energy. But then, like, I feel like if I see the world like that, I get obsessed so easy of what I think or what I do or like what the world is trying to tell me. Because sometimes I feel like the world communicates too much. Like there are signs everywhere. Like the fact that I'm here too, it makes me like it's part of all this. Like, why am I here? Why did I decide so spontaneously to come here? And I'm having this conversation with you. And it's fucking my mind too.
Yeah. It seems like there's a part of this that makes you like nervous and unsettled.
Yeah.
That's the part that I'm not getting, because some of this seems to me like kind of like a superpower. Like the way that you're communicating with the world. Like I feel like a lot of people would do anything to be able to have an increased sensitivity to nature and be able to communicate. But you don't seem to see it completely positively.
Like, I love it, but
yeah.
I loved it in Hawaii because it was nature. And I'm not scared of nature. I love nature and I love what nature tells me. But I don't know, when I feel like I need to be in nature to embrace that. I guess. I don't know how to express. I don't know my feelings about it, but sometimes it's like too much.
And you feel safer when that communication is happening when you're in nature.
Yeah, that's the reason why every time I do shrooms,
yeah.
Like, I've never done shrooms with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Just once I did shrooms and I was like people in Hawaii and I was in a drum circle. So I wasn't like with people, you know, like people were there, but I wasn't interacting with them.
Yeah.
Then at that night, then I was interacting with people, but never like go with someone like, oh, let's do shrooms together. Like I've never done that. I've always been by myself in nature, and if I feel alone, I know that the trees are gonna be with me, or like nature is gonna be with me. They're gonna take care of me, you know.
Yeah, I think it seems to have like, what is the connection? We were talking earlier about communication with nature, and you were like, okay, in nature I feel safe, but in the city crazy things can happen.
Okay, so then
and
at that point, then when I went home, I was like, okay, I have to stop trusting everybody. Because also in Hawaii, I've been like in so many, like the first time I tried LSD, it was also like, I learned so much about life because it also showed me the darkness. Like, okay, at night it's beautiful, Hawaii it's beautiful, Paia it's beautiful, like it's beautiful in the daylight and everything is safe. But then at night, it's when everything happens and it's the darkness. So you gotta go home to not see that, because you know you're gonna be in scary situations. And this experience was a reminder of that. Like, hey, you forgot about that experience that you had. You have to remind yourself that, hey, there's so many things going on in the world. You just don't want to see them. Yeah. But they're there. Yeah. And then when I was on mushrooms, like, I know I want to see that darkness. I just want to feel ready to do it. So I feel like someday, eventually, I will be ready to see, like, okay, show me.
When you're going to be able to, like, manage it more.
Yeah.
And you know that you're not going to get, like, lost or harmed in it.
Basically.
Something that I feel very curious about is it seems like you have this, like, kind of an ability to communicate with nature. I think most people don't even understand what that means when you say communicate with nature, or like interact with have you ever, like you asked me yesterday, have you ever interacted with an animal while on LSD? And you were like, you're talking about this cat that was in the room and it was kind of a wild cat, and you started realizing a lot of the things about how the animals have been domesticated like dogs, and a lot of their nature has been forgotten, or they've been forced to forget a lot of their nature. So when I am hearing these stories, I'm kind of feeling like you have some kind of a communication channel with nature. But what is it like? Like, it's not really words that you hear. Like, what is the form in which you are communicating with nature? Is it like when you say, okay, like, I want to learn from the ocean when you were in Maui. Like, what is that form of communication like? It's not like you're literally talking.
Yeah.
So is it like visions or feelings? How can you describe that communication? Like,
first of all, I think we all have the ability to communicate with nature, especially with animals. But I feel like, for example, normally I'm not able to communicate with nature just if I am in a good state of mind, or like if I have been meditating for a while. Because with meditation and yoga, it teaches you some values to be in a state of vulnerability.
Yes, that word.
Vulnerability, okay.
Yeah.
And so with animals, if you see them, you can see some values of yoga because they don't like the ego. So yeah, I feel like the ego make us not being able to communicate with our surrounder. But when you take the ego and you do like this, and you're able to be in a state of love, of vulnerability, respect, connection, then you're gonna be able to do that. And like also willing to talk to nature. Because for example, you meditate, you know about that, you've been in psychedelics, you have the ability to communicate with nature, but maybe you don't have the purpose of doing it. Maybe you're in nature and you're just like, yeah, I'm chilling in nature, but you don't have the purpose of communicating with nature. But if you want to, you're gonna be able to do it. You're just gonna have the purpose to do it.
Yeah.
And we all have the ability.
And what does that communication feel like for you?
So
It's not like words that nature is speaking into your ears. It's not like, is it like visions that you see, or is it feelings? How can you describe it?
So the first time I felt the communication with nature, it was the first time not the first time, but the second time I was in the shrooms. It was the first time I was in the shrooms by myself completely. Now that I think, okay, the first time I took shrooms with people, but they weren't high. So, whatever. So I was in fucking Hollywood, in the Hollywood Trail, and so I was sitting in a rock, and then I saw a tree. And so what I felt in the communication was for example, the tree was dying, and I was like feeling, it's like, yeah, of course it's not words. Sometimes it can be words, like in my mind, like they're telling me something, or like maybe I asked them something like, how are you feeling? Or like, and like suddenly it's like, oh, you're feeling this. Or, so it's not like words, it's like feelings of sadness or like they make me realize things. Like for example, one of the trees was telling me all the bad things that were going on in Hollywood. And so I was like, the tree was making me realize that. Like I feel like the tree was telling me like, hey, you see around, like you see how fucked up the nature is or something. The ocean is like, I don't know. I'm really happy because now I'm remembering. But yeah, with the oceans, like I feel things and it makes me realize things. Sometimes I'm even able to talk to the ocean, like I ask something or like I say something and I feel like the ocean is hearing me. Yeah, and like it's more about the heart, I think. I don't know how to express it. Yeah. But like I think we all have the ability to do it. You just gotta like try it. Like be meditating for a while, then take shrooms and be always with the purpose of being open and love. And then you go to nature, you will feel which tree wants to talk to you. Just like, you know, when you go to somewhere and you see, for example, with people, no, you go to a place and suddenly a person you see, it's like, oh, I want to talk to that person. Have you ever had the feeling? Yeah. Okay, so it happens too in the forest. Maybe you're like in the forest and you're like, you see a tree and it's like, I want to talk to that tree or something. Like the tree's calling you. So yeah, so that's the tree that wants to communicate with you. So you just sit on the tree, just feel the tree, and the tree will tell you things. Right?
That's interesting. So with this also, do you ever feel like, okay, is this really like nature talking to me? Yeah. Or am I talking to myself by projecting it into nature? Like, do you ever feel like that?
It's like, I've had that feeling like maybe it's just me and my mind. But I feel like no, because I've learned so many things. Like, why am I learning this if I've never, you know? Or, like, for example, when a tree was dying, like, I was able to feel death. Because it was dying and it was telling me, hey, this is death. Or, like, this is what it feels like to be dying. Yeah. Like, just by seeing the tree, like, I will normally see a tree dying and I was like, oh, the tree's dying. Yeah. And I'm not feeling anything, you know?
Yeah. I feel like something that might be difficult for a person like you who's like, you know, kind of more sensitive to nature is we are at a stage where I think we are kind of like killing the planet. Like there's so much pollution and trash and like, you know, climate change. Do you think it's especially hard for a person like you to stay in this world?
The thing is, like, I don't feel like I have a connection, and that is something I've been thinking a lot. I don't feel like I have a connection with animals or nature.
You don't?
No, I do not. Like, I feel like I can be in that state, but I don't normally. Like, I want to learn how to be able to communicate with them. Because, for example, with animals, I feel like some people have, like an ability to, for example, there are people that loves dogs a lot, and you see those people interacting with dogs, and you see how dogs just came to them because they feel like they want to talk to them. But for me, it doesn't happen. Like dogs, like I see dogs, and sometimes I'm like, oh, it's dogs, you know. Like I would like to learn how to communicate with them, and I am able to learn and be in a state of communicating with them. But I don't think I have that. I think some people do, and I have known people that, since they have been children, as they have been raised with animals in nature, they are able to communicate with that. But I think I do not have it.
Yeah, you're comparing yourself to some other people who are like maybe even more communicative. Yeah. But I would say compared to many other people, like you seem to have like some like greater communication with nature. I don't know. That's just the way that it seems to me.
But like I think it's not something of my person. It's something that I've learned.
Okay.
Yeah, like, or having like the purpose of doing it.
Yeah, but you, for some reason, you have cared to learn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people might not even
think about it.
Like you were trying to tell me, you know, these are the things that you can do. You can like meditate, take shrooms, go to nature and do these things. Yeah. To a lot of people, even if you tell them, they're like, I don't feel like I want to do that. Yeah. You know, but
because they don't care.
Yeah, you care to learn that. So. I guess like this question comes from a little bit more of a personal perspective that I have not explained. I think when I was a kid, I was more sensitive to nature. There was a coconut tree next to our house, and one day they chopped off the coconut tree, and I had to go up to the roof and be by myself to just cry about it. And someone came and saw me, and, you know, because I was embarrassed to, like, cry about something that seems to not be an issue with, like, anyone else. So, and also, like, there were, like, other things, too. So, we had, like, some rats in our house. And so, rats.
Okay.
And so, my dad bought some poison to kill the rats. And I had actually seen some rats being found at some part of the house, like in the stairs. There were some rats and their babies. And the baby rats actually don't have any fur. They're just like little pink things, and they're like very cute and soft. And I was like, oh my god, these are like little living things, and we're going to give them this poison and they're going to die.
They're like, yes.
Yeah.
That's the purpose.
And my dad was like, yeah, okay, so what happens is, when these rats eat this poison, they basically die of thirst. Something like that, you know? So we should not leave any like water around. And so after everyone went to bed, I secretly went and put some water in the corner. And then in the morning, my dad was like, so I found this water over here. Did you put that over? I was like, yeah. So I don't know, I guess. So I think when I was a kid, I was like more sensitive, not just to like animals or nature, but I think also to human emotions. Like I vaguely remember if I was in a room and there were like 10, 15 people in the room and one of them was not having a good time, like I could not ignore it. Somehow I knew it. I just knew this person over there in that corner of the room, in the middle of all this talking and everything that's going on, and like nobody's noticing, I can tell that person is not having a good time. And I would be feeling that. And I somehow could not block it out of my mind. But I also didn't necessarily know what to do about it. And I think as I grew up, a lot of these sensitivities kind of like became repressed or went away. And I think one thing that I feel like even today is I feel pretty bad about how we are treating the planet. And in many ways it kind of seems like like we're doing it at such a large scale now, like with climate change and like trash and things like that, that I kind of feel like I don't know how to deal with it, like on the level of feelings. So when I meet someone like you who seems to be kind of like sensitive to nature or to care about nature, like is it hard for you to be in a time like this when it seems like we're kind of like destroying the planet, or do you not feel that way?
Like, I think we have the same struggle, like we want to do something, but we are like, what can I do? Like at some point, like since I came to the United States and I was like, okay, first, before I say something, I want to tell you, like, why do you think you don't feel that connection anymore?
I do feel it a little bit,
yeah, but
I think when I was growing up, consciously or subconsciously, I must have suppressed those feelings. One was, a lot of those feelings were not good. It was feelings of pain and suffering. And, of course, I don't want to feel pain and suffering. Like, for example, if there's another person in the room and I'm feeling their pain and suffering. And the other part would be, it's even harder when nobody else seems to be sensitive to that. So if everyone else in the room was like, oh, what is going on also, then I would feel like that feeling is legitimized. Like, yeah, everyone else feels it. And they also feel that this is important, is something to address. When they're chopping down the tree, I felt like I was the only one having a problem with that. And since I was the only one having a problem with that, it was like my situation was a problem in that setting. So I think maybe consciously or subconsciously, I kind of learned that I just have to be suppressing these feelings. And maybe I did not know consciously how to suppress it. Like I was telling you, I didn't know how to block off those feelings. But somehow I think, like children or even like adults, even if we don't know consciously how to suppress it, like at some point subconsciously our brain learns how to suppress some amounts of information from us. So I think at some point I just started becoming desensitized. And I think I want to become resensitized again because I think it's very important. But also I feel like there's a lot of suffering involved in becoming resensitized. So I don't know how you feel about it.
Like, I feel like when we are children, we are able to see more things, like connect with everything way more. Like if you see children interacting with animals, and if you tell them, hey, yeah, we're gonna kill the dog, they're gonna be like crazy. Because they haven't learned like dogs. Or like, for example, a sheep, you see a child with a sheep and then they tell the kid, yeah, we're gonna kill that sheep. The kid will cry. Like 90% of chance that the kid will cry because they are able to connect with animals. We are able, when we are born, to connect with everything. We just learn how to not to. For example, you were able to connect even more than other children. So you were even like, okay, like even kids like me are not even able to feel this. And so the world has told you, hey, you don't have to be this way. You have to be like everybody else, like not caring at all. So basically what you said, you suppress that power because society tells you not to care. Because that way you're going to be able to follow everybody and like keep this thing going on. Yeah, like for example, you said, I don't blame the system, I don't blame people. But I think that so many people are in charge and have a lot of power to change the world. And they don't do it. They just want to keep supporting the system because it's convenient for them. And corruption is good for them because they can have power. They are going to be unhappy anyway, but I think that power is because they feel like the power is the purpose.
Yeah.
They're going to be in darkness, but it's their darkness, it's putting everything in darkness.
Yeah.
And like we learn how to, like you learn how to turn off your power, but you have the power. Like, of course, you're going to be able to get it back, but yeah. Like embrace that power.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you can think like what things made you not have it that intense anymore. Like, was it like, for example, you said that when you were a kid growing, like in your country, like your family had like so many like rules and stuff. Like you felt like the society that you were living in had so many rules and obligations, and maybe that put you like, no, you don't have to care about this. You have to care about being successful, or you have to care about work, or like studies, or like do science, or like whatever, or like I don't know. So maybe it was that, like, they were putting your mind in other places. Like, you don't have to concentrate about that anymore, like this. So maybe now you have to think, okay, like, what, like, ignoring or all what people have been telling me, like, what can I do? What's my power? What do I like? Yeah, like, I've been thinking so much about tastes and like things that we like. It's like, do I really like what I like, or did I learn to like these things, you know?
Yeah. That's interesting.
What are you gonna do then? Like you said, you want to reconnect, so how are you gonna do it?
I don't know, you know. So last night when I woke up and I had that thought of like yeah, we are here to learn to love better. I remember that sometime in the recent past, like in the last couple of years, I became more serious about the goal of learning to love better. And I think there are things that you can do, because I think like deep inside us, we all know what that means to learn to love better, but somehow that knowledge is like hidden from our conscious mind by like different layers. A lot of those layers are these layers of like suppression and desensitization and all of these things that we have learned over our lifetimes. But I think it's quite possible to keep practicing in different situations. Like, what does it mean in this situation to be more compassionate? And definitely, it's very probable that I'll get it wrong. And I've gotten it wrong like multiple times, you know. Yeah, there are many things that I can do that I think at the moment, oh, this is the more compassionate thing, and then it turns out, nah, that wasn't really. But I think it's possible to keep like experimenting. And I think the intention matters a lot. Other than just, you know, exactly what do you do or how do you go about it? Okay, those things are secondary. But as long as the intention is there, I think it's going to keep, you know, keep pushing things along. So I don't know exactly what it means, but there are things happening all the time in your own life. It doesn't have to be some like great glorified, you know, some kind of a spiritual quest where you go somewhere and do something to learn about love. Like there's constantly things happening in your own life. And I think each of these situations, no matter how ordinary they seem, there is something to kind of learn there. Like a little bit of experimentation that you can do, where you try something a little bit different from how you did things yesterday. And I think basically a lot of this learning about love is basically like overcoming the ego. And one way that I read it described what is the ego in a book is the ego is a force of inertia. It's like you want to keep being the way that you are. And that's like the force of the ego. So trying to change from that means that when a situation comes up in your life, your default reaction is some way, but you try to have like a slightly different reaction, maybe a more vulnerable reaction, maybe a more open reaction, and it's hard. It's hard to do that, but I think those are like little steps, and you take that little step, and I think what happens is you don't have to figure out all of the steps at once. You take that little step, and when you take that little step, that changes you a little bit. And after that changes you a little bit, that little changed version of you is going to act differently in that next step. And certain things are going to become easier and more natural and more obvious than they were before. And then with that new attitude or new self, you're going to take the next step. And then the next step is going to change you a little bit more. And like completely different things are going to start to happen than you could have even imagined when you were in step 1. Like in step 1, you cannot imagine all the way up to step 10 because you're imagining from the perspective of the self that you are in step 1. But each of these steps change you a little bit and new things become possible. So, yeah, I don't know.
It's like changing to become a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
But then what do you do?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So, for example, you told me that you care about the world and everything. So, and you have decided to be in science.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what is the purpose of your life? Because you seem to know what you want to do in life, and like, yeah, I'm gonna do my PhD. I'm gonna do like whatever.
Yeah.
So, why are you doing all of this? Like, how do you think you can change the world? Or
I would say that my main purpose of doing science is not to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
I do science because I have a lot of curiosity about the world, and I get a lot of rewards from doing science and learning about the world. But I don't do it in my mind with some kind of a picture of this is how I want to change the world. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there are like those things, like for example, I want my scientific knowledge to become like pretty widely available to everyone. So I try to take some steps to make sure that it's like out there. You know, I go and edit Wikipedia and things like that so that the knowledge gets out. But yeah, I would say that I don't do science with some kind of very strong, absolute sense of purpose. For me, a lot of it is like a play. Like, it just feels like fun, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I would say science is also not like my only purpose. Like, that's what I'm doing. But that's only a part of my identity. There's like other things that I do also. That I'm into, that I'm also passionate about. So I would not define science as like the only purpose of my life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also like traveling. I like interacting with people. I feel like life is just kind of happening and unfolding in the way that it is happening. But yeah, we will see. I don't have any very strong ambitions of changing the world, but I do have little ambitions of changing my world a little bit, just the world around me, just a little bit, and we'll see how that works.
Yeah. It's like, I've been thinking so much, like, okay, like, I feel like I am really privileged for being where I am, like, for born in the place I have born and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, it's like, okay, I feel like having this privilege, I have to do something to change the system that is making me have that privilege. Mm-hmm. But how? How do you think can someone...
Are you right now in a question mark phase?
Yeah, that's what I feel like.
Yeah.
What can I do? And I've been thinking so much about it. I was like, okay. And then I got to thinking so much and like analyzing how people that are out of the system act. Like, for example, in the United States, the hippie community, it's people that have a knowledge that the system it's bad and it's making so much bad to the society and the world. And their response to that, to the system and to change the world, is having an alternative lifestyle. And I was really curious about that. So I was like, okay, this sounds like a something. But then it's like, okay, you have an alternative lifestyle, but what do you do with that? You just don't support the system, but you're not changing it. Mm. And you're using your privilege to have a happy life out of the system. Mm. That you're using your privilege to be happy, not making any change. Because, like, I know I could be happy, like, being like, yeah, I'm gonna be a hippie, I'm gonna be happy, I'm gonna be out of the system, fuck everything, fuck the system, but I'm not changing anything. And that's what
So you feel like you want to change the system, but at the moment you're not quite sure how.
Yeah, like I know that the biggest way to change the system, I guess it's politics. Because it's like what, after all, rules everything, but I know I wouldn't be able to be in politics. But I think that's like the main force of changing the world, politics. Yeah, and then you see like how the world have been changing in terms of rights or in terms of whatever. It's always related to politics too. So I guess that's the answer. Like, how can I change the world? Well, be in politics or do something about politics or be involved in that. And like if you see like hippie people are not usually involved in politics. Yeah. So, yeah. And then, because then I was thinking so much about science. Like science, I feel like it can change the world too, but sometimes it's really related to the actual like the current politics that are in. It's really controlled by the system too sometimes, and so it's like like science started as something out of curiosity and knowing more about the world, but now it's really connected to capitalism too. Yeah. And so it's like, like people trying to find cures for something, but then the pharmacy goes and buys whatever, and then it's like, then nothing matters, and so I don't know. Yeah, but like I said, I think it's not a bad thing to stay in this uncertain phase. Yeah, because then I'll find something. Yeah. It's like that. All right, shall we get going? Nice conversation. Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out with me and my friend in the Room of Lives. See you in a while, alligator.